I'm Matt McClure.
And I'm Francesca Maxime, and this is Currents.
A race where everyone who competes is a winner.
You're not focusing on your own weakness. You're uplifting someone else for their strengths.
The king of pop and the culture that crowned him.
There's Michael Jackson, the icon, who's on stage, who is a fantasy, and then there's Michael Jackson, the man, who's a flawed and tragic individual.
And her Irish eyes are smiling, and her voice is singing.
You don't preach, I don't preach to people. I'll tell them my language.
Good Thursday evening. According to the last census, 1 in 5 Americans, nearly 50 million men, women, and children, have some form of disability. But more and more, we're being reminded that physical limitations are really in the eye and the mind of the beholder.
That's right, and you're about to meet one woman who is helping those with disabilities realize their abilities and giving all of us something to cheer about and a cause to cheer on. It is Tuesday, and Mary Bryant is in Central Park for another day of warm-ups with her running club. But it's unlike any other running club in the city. All the runners are disabled. This is the Achilles Club, taking its name from the mythical Greek hero who had just one weakness, his heel. But the members of the Achilles Club find in these gatherings not weakness, but strength.
When you're out there and you're doing something for someone else, you become stronger, you become more empowered, because you're not focusing on your own weakness, you're uplifting someone else for their strengths, and that strengthens you.
Mary has run her own surprising race through life. She grew up in Cleveland and came to New York 15 years ago to be a Ford model. She started running to keep her trim figure after battles with bulimia and anorexia. Soon, she felt called to fight another battle for her older brother, Don.
God immediately just put this in my mind. Wait a minute. Don can't run. Don can't even walk out the door.
Don was a quadriplegic, paralyzed from the neck down after an accident that snapped his spinal cord. He was confined to a wheelchair at home in Ohio.
I have 2 legs, and that day I called him and I said, I'm going to do this for you, and I'm going to do it for me, because I can.
Her plan was to run in the next New York City Marathon and to run for Don.
And it was in 1994 that I did my first marathon. I had his picture on my shirt, "Go Mary, do it for Don," and I made 2 of them, and I sent one to him in Cleveland. I would tell him what it was like to do these marathons and the people cheering, and I said, it would be so cool if you could just be out there with me. He's like, oh yeah.
But running for him wasn't enough. Mary wanted to run with him. In 1997, the 2 of them completed the marathon together, with Don using a special chair that he controlled by moving his head.
He was the first man without use of his arms or legs to do the marathon on his own strength. Imagine 25 years of having other people feed you, bathe you, dress you, brush your teeth, and sit you in a chair. And finally, he got to go out and do something on his own.
After that race, Mary is now a dedicated marathoner, training up to 45 miles a week. She developed a program coaching people with severe disabilities in wheelchairs called Don's Team. Mary is now vice president of Achilles International. The team competes in marathons nationwide, most recently at the Hope and Possibility 5K in Central Park last month. Her goals are to inspire and build confidence for the men and women who are disabled. And as much as she is guided by her own experience and determination, she's also driven by something deeper, her faith.
I honestly believe God is in my heart, Jesus is in my life, and Mary has been more than a role model. Knowing that I was named after the Virgin Mary, I've often caught myself in prayer to her, saying, you know, please let me be respectful to you and do the best I can. But make time for prayer. Because as long as we can stay focused and our foundation is straight and we're on the right path, everything will fall in place.
Wow, Wow, Matt, what an inspiring story that is.
Definitely.
I think she did that all for her brother. Well, she mentioned running in the New York City Marathon. That race happens every year in November, and it's the next big race coming up this year. Well, stay tuned. When Currents returns, we'll have the day's headlines.
And as the world mourns Michael Jackson, a look at celebrity worship.
When you become a celebrity that's known around the world, it doesn't really matter what the reason is that you've become so famous.
Welcome back to Currents. I'm Francesca Maxime.
And I'm Matt McClure. Coming up later, we'll revisit an entertainer who's been on just about every show you can name.
Absolutely. But first, the day's headlines and possibly the most famous singer ever. Fans continue to mourn the death of Michael Jackson. A memorial service for the singer will happen next Tuesday at the Staples Center in Los Angeles. That's the same place where Jackson was rehearsing the night before he died. The Vatican's newspaper wrote that despite his personal troubles, Jackson was on his way to becoming a pop icon like Elvis Presley or Jimi Hendrix. And we wanted to get some reaction from the men and women on the street, the fans. So our Natalia Ortiz headed up to Harlem to talk with people outside the Apollo Theater.
Celebrity worship is hardly new. Princess Diana, Elvis Presley, and Michael Jackson are just a few of the famous who have inspired an intense, almost religious devotion. Michael Jackson's death reignited a love for the pop icon not seen in years. But when does an icon become an idol?
If you are attaching a tremendous amount of meaning to a celebrity and you're believing you can actually have a real relationship with a celebrity is not a person, a celebrity is a fantasy. I mean, there's Michael Jackson, the icon who's on stage, who is a fantasy, and then there's Michael Jackson, the man who's a flawed and tragic individual.
Some fans can lose sight of the fact that Jackson was a human being and treat him less like a man, more like a god. Some speculate this idolatry is what reportedly led up to 12 people to commit suicide as a result of Jackson's death.
So people who move to the worship end are having a wish or belief that they can have a relationship with the fantasy. And once you're doing that, you're in trouble. You're in trouble.
Most people, of course, don't take their admiration to this extreme. We met some fans who paid tribute to the King of Pop in the streets of Harlem this week, and they told us they know where to draw the line.
Sometimes it could be borderline worshiping as a godly figure. What do you think about that?
I think you should only worship one person, and that's God. So that's how I feel about that.
If the individual is psyched out, believing that that a celebrity is God, then they need help.
Fantasy is what makes us uniquely human. Because we have the ability to fantasize, we can develop a mind, we can go to college, we can get married, we can buy a house. It's a very important part of who we are.
But she says it can also end up being twisted into something unhealthy.
People who worship God, who have a real faith, who have internalized the teachings of a specific religion, they take comfort from that. And that's an internalized experience. People who are idolizing a star, that's an external experience. That's something that's depleting them. That's something that they're looking to get some gratification from that they will never get.
But among those we met in Harlem, most weren't looking for gratification, but expressing gratitude. Gratitude for who Michael Jackson was and for what he gave the world.
And I've been praying for him.
Yes. Praying for him?
Yes, for that may he rest in peace and be at peace with God.
And we'll have more on Michael Jackson and the ideas of pop icons and celebrity worship later on in the show. In other entertainment news, Hollywood is also mourning the loss of actor Karl Malden. He died yesterday at the age of 97 in Los Angeles. One of Malden's most famous roles was that of Father Pete Barry in the film On the Waterfront. That character was based on the real-life priest, Father John Corden, who was a labor leader for port workers in New York.
In Mexico, priests are fighting for their lives. Reuters reports they're being targeted by drug traffickers for speaking out about cartels. One pastor says drug gangs have threatened to burn him and his family alive. Back to this country now, where senators from both sides of the aisle are calling on Vietnam's president to free a jailed Catholic priest. Father Thaddeus Nguyen Van Ly had spent 16 years in jail and was sentenced last year to another 8 years on charges he spread propaganda against Vietnam's communist government. A group of 37 senators calling for his release is led by Sam Brownback of Kansas and also by Barbara Boxer of California.
Well, stay tuned. When Currents returns, we'll have a closer look at the phenomenon that is Michael Jackson and the idea of celebrity worship. Welcome back to Currents. Well, we just saw fans outside the Apollo Theater in Harlem expressing their feelings on Michael Jackson and his death. Jackson has really attained the status of a pop idol or pop icon, and it's almost to the point that he's being worshipped. It's kind of an interesting phenomenon and something that we wanted to examine a little bit further. And here to help us is Paul Levinson. He is the professor of communication and media studies at Fordham University. He's also an author, and his latest book, New Media, will be published by Penguin Academics next month. And Paul, thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure.
I appreciate it. Obviously, the maelstrom of coverage for the death of Michael Jackson, a lot of people are seemingly in real mourning over it. What is it about our culture, about people, that really makes them so in tune and so connected in their minds and hearts to someone like Michael Jackson?
Well, in Michael Jackson's case, there's something special about music, the way people respond to it. Even Plato recognized this. When we listen to music, it can bring us back to an earlier time in our lives. When we first heard that song, it can bring tears to our eyes. It can get us all excited. And so Michael Jackson was not only a pop star, he was a pop star in the musical theater. And he danced, he sang, he had a beautiful voice. And so his death in particular struck very deeply in many people's psyches.
Well, because like you say, it can bring them back to a particular time or whatnot. What is it about this business of really sort of worshiping him, putting him on this above? He was immortal. He has died. What is it about people that makes them feel the need to really be that connected, be that involved, that interested?
If you think about what an angel can do, that is, an angel in religion, be anywhere on the face of the earth. If you're an archangel, you can be everywhere at once. Well, Michael Jackson was that on television screens, in music that people heard. He wasn't just Michael Jackson, the individual person. He was Michael Jackson, the image that people saw in the Thriller video, the person that people saw on the Ed Sullivan Show in the 1960s.
Sure.
And that's a very profound thing, to see someone all the time over a 30, 40-year period of time.
Right, yeah, obviously he had a very long career, and there's been a lot of talk that he's sort of like Elvis, or like we were saying, perhaps Princess Diana, or even religious figures like Gandhi or Mother Teresa or the Pope. What is it that is different, perhaps, about him, being a non-religious figure, but still having these throngs of followers? And perhaps what is it that's the same?
Well, what's the same is ultimately when you become very famous, when you become a celebrity that's known around the world, it doesn't really matter what the reason is that you've become so famous. It could be a political reason, such as Barack Obama is now a worldwide celebrity. It could be a reason having to do with religion, such as the Pope or Mother Teresa. It could be a reason having to do with science. Albert Einstein was that level of celebrity. And so in Michael Jackson's case, the particular flavor of the celebrity was the pop icon, music star, the power of music, his very otherworldly visual image. I mean, if you think about what he looked like,
right, yeah,
he didn't look like anybody else.
No, well, and he changed, obviously, the way that
right.
he looked, either intentionally or whatever, over the course of time.
That's right.
But I think that a lot of people, that gets to my other point a little bit, is what is it about perhaps a celebrity like him, or an entertainer, whatever you want to call it, that makes people sort of perhaps be self-reflective in some respect? I mean, do people see themselves within him? Are they looking to be more like him? Do they, and mind you, he wasn't always worshipped. He was, there were throngs outside that courthouse when he was, in there. He, obviously they've joked about a lot of things about him over the course of time, and then he comes back and everybody loves him, and then now he dies and everybody even loves him more.
Yeah. Well, several things about that. One is, I think there are at least two reasons that people felt and still feel so strongly about Michael Jackson. One is they wanted to be like him, to be able to dance like him. That's what the moonwalk was all about. It's so cool, so smooth, so effortless. Right. The other thing, though, is that his songs were, in their own way, very profound. They spoke to us. One of my favorite Michael Jackson songs is She's Out of My Life, where he actually breaks down and cries at the end of the song. That was, I think it was maybe like 1979, so sort of in the mid part of his career. And anyone who's ever had someone leave them that they loved in a romantic sense can instantly relate to that song.
It's almost like poetry in that respect.
It is like poetry.
What are some of the dangers, though, perhaps, of not having your organized, if you are, whatever your faith may be, however a person may construct their own faith, Catholic, anything, Muslim, Jewish, anything, atheist, whatever, there's sort of a moral compass, perhaps, that we would like to think that most people try to aspire to. What's perhaps the danger in looking toward a celebrity, a Michael Jackson, whomever, that is immortal, as opposed to perhaps grounding yourself and centering yourself more on, the true faith aspect of things?
I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive. In fact, I think we are multitasking beings when it comes to having faith and idolizing people. So I think we're perfectly capable of believing in a religion or being an atheist, believing in a political figure or disagreeing with that figure, and loving various pop stars. And not only that, pop stars in music, pop stars in the movies, pop stars on television. All of that appeals to the same basic human need.
Well, we just have a couple of seconds. I don't know what exactly you talk about in your new book, The New Media, but obviously, what do you think of this new phenomenon, of this new media? How is this playing into the way this is playing out on a worldwide stage?
It's enabling a world dialogue that's happening much faster than ever before. Huge proportions. Nathaniel Hawthorne talked about in The House of the Seven Gables how the earth was like a brain teeming with information. He was talking about the telegraph.
Sure. Wow. A lot's changed since then.
That's right.
Well, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. Fascinating discussion. I think it's quite cool. Professor Paul Levinson of Communication and Media Studies at Fordham University, thank you again. And Matt, now let's send it back on over to you.
Coming up, from Dublin to Carnegie Hall.
I love it when I'm out there with the audience. Everybody's enjoying, hopefully.
Well, finally tonight, we met her before, but on a night that we're talking about the legacy and celebrity of Michael Jackson, we wanted to have another look at an entertainer from a different era. In her case, it started with Arthur Godfrey's Talent Scouts. Entertainer Carmel Quinn became a regular on Godfrey's show and also appeared on The Today Show, The Tonight Show, Merv Griffin, Dick Cavett, and Regis and Kathy Lee.
Lots of different appearances.
She's been everywhere.
Along the way, she starred on Broadway and has been playing a sold-out St. Patrick's Day show at Carnegie Hall for more than 25 years. Tonight, this Irish immigrant is our eyewitness.
You don't preach. I don't preach to people. I'll tell them my end of it, and maybe bit by bit, little rubs off. I would say to my father, he wanted me to be a teacher, and I have great respect for a good teacher. I love teachers, but I didn't want to be one. I wanted to sing. It was what I loved. My sister, she would come and help me with my dress and iron it. And then she'd come down to where I'd be singing and bring holy water and drench me. I'd say, my hair, you're ruining it. That was before every show. Even today, I have it. And sings my song, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. My faith was a very strange faith, because first as a child, in Ireland, it was built on a lot of fear. Your fear of God, fear of sin. And when I went to London with a big band, I didn't have to go to Mass. But funny enough, I went. And the orchestra would be held up on Sunday mornings, and I had a job in England to find a Catholic church. I would come back onto our big touring bus, everyone's sitting there. I had every reason not to go. I was embarrassed. I was being glared at. My faith got stronger as I got older. A different kind of faith. Instead of fearing God, it was I saw a loving God.
I did not behave well as a child in Mass. Well, first of all, it was in Latin. I would tell my sister and all our friends what he was saying. He would say, Nomine Patri, Filii, Spiritus Sanctus, so on, and I'd say, he says we're going on a picnic.
In the long run, there is nothing like faith in God, and nothing like what our religion brings to us, to be decent, kind. You can be a blessing, maybe meeting someone who's down or sick, and chat to them and have them laughing in a few minutes. It's a blessing. I love it when I'm out there with the audience. Everybody's enjoying, hopefully. Little holy water needed.
Well, she's got me smiling. Entertainer Carmel Quinn there.
What a cutie pie. She's been on all those shows. I mean, she's obviously traveled around the world, around the country, performing and everything, making a lot of people smile. But the thing I like the most that she said was when she was younger, she had the fear of God, and now she has the love of God, basically. And,
yeah.
And it's such a nice transformation.
Just kind of, looking at how her faith has kind of changed over the years, because, I guess when she was growing up, it was more of, God, being the overseer, the,
stern.
lashing out,
yeah.
the stern kind of father figure. But then she grew up and
even taking the bus and going on tour. I mean, she was determined to go to church.
Absolutely. And, it was really funny. I thought her translation of the Latin Mass when she was growing up to her sister, that's great. We're going on a picnic. No. Anyway. Well, coming up tomorrow, the beginning of the 4th of July weekend, and we'll visit one neighborhood that's already started celebrating. We'll have that and more tomorrow, right here on Currents.
And that is all for this edition of Currents. Remember, you can always watch us online at netny.net, and we'd also like to hear from you. So send us an email drop us a line at currentsny.net. The address is just that. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Francesca Maxime.
I'm Matt McClure. Have a great night.